Before we get right into the list, obviously as the title says, I'm going to be going over a player from each team that's vital to their team's success in this upcoming season. Obviously, I could go with each team's best player, but as you're going to see from the players that I talk about, it's not as easy as that, in my opinion. There's many more players on a roster that can create a team to be either good or bad, and that's what I'm going to go over. So let's get right into the list. Starting with the 76ers, I have Tyrese Maxey. He's going into his fourth year in this upcoming season. Each year, he's improved in points per game. His rookie year, he averaged 8, and last year, he averaged 20. So a big jump. He's proven that he can be an absolute scorer in this league. To me, he's going to be vital to the success based on the point we know what Joel Embiid can do. Potential of James Harden being gone and going to a different team. And if that happens, Tyrese Maxey is going to get a lot more touches of the ball. He's going to get a lot more possessions. He's probably going to be leading the ball up somewhat. He's going to have to show that he can be a willing passer. He's going to have to show that he has that all-star potential and that he can be a dynamic duo with Joel Embiid. I think he can do it. We all know what Joel Embiid can do, which is why Tyrese is my pick for their success. And it's just going to be very important for the Philadelphia 76ers that Tyrese continues his improvement. He averages more than 20 points per game. And if he does, they're going to be one of the favorites. Now, this is what I mean when I say I'm not going with all the star players on a team. Because for the Milwaukee Bucks, I'm picking Marion Beauchamp. Obviously, I could pick Giannis. I could pick Drew Holiday. I could pick Chris Middleton. But we know those three guys can win a championship. And the Bucks' main priority is obviously winning a championship. They have the squad to do it. They have the talent. But the league is constantly improving. The league is not the same as 3 years ago when they won it all. You have to constantly be improving. You have to be able to get young guys who can improve. And I think Marion Beauchamp is exactly that. I know this doesn't mean anything or little to many people, but in the crossover league, he scored a lot of points. He's been working in the offseason. He had a small sample size last year for the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, he averaged 5 points per game on 13 minutes played. He started for 11 of those games. And he's just going to be very vital for them off the bench. Like I said, you need to constantly be developing players because you're going to need new game plans. Teams are going to be able to figure you out. And if Marion Beauchamp can improve and have an amazing sophomore season, it's going to be very vital for the Milwaukee Bucks. For the Chicago Bulls, it's 2020, fourth overall pick, Patrick Williams. Going into his rookie campaign, he was getting a lot of comparisons to Kawhi Leonard, and obviously he has not shown out to be that type of player. His offense is very scattered. Last year was one of his worst years. I mean, he scored the most points offensively, but he was also getting the most points. His efficiency was going down. But if the Bulls if they want to unlock their full potential, because they got Zach LaVine, they got DeMar DeRozan, the Bulls have amazing talent. They have amazing potential to be a great team. And one of the main factors why they're not is obviously with Lonzo Ball out and their defense. And Patrick Williams is a great defender. That's what he was drafted for. They were hoping that his offense would improve. And there's always workout videos in the offseason of Patrick Williams going in the gym, doing turnaround jumpers, fadeaway jumpers in the post, middies. He definitely needs to improve on his efficiency. I mean, he shot 40% from three, but he only shot 3 threes per game. And if Patrick Williams can be just a semblance of what people thought he was going to be, being drafted at number 4, it could very well help the Bulls tremendously. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's Evan Mobley. Last year, he had a great season defensively. He was on the all-defensive team. There were no problems with his regular season play. He obviously helped their team get to the seat that they were in the playoffs. the Cleveland Cavaliers were a great team last year. There's no doubt about that. But what they need to see from Evan Mobley going into next year that's really going to help them push is the playoffs. Because in the playoffs, his numbers fell tremendously. He was going from 16 points per game to less than 10. And he was getting more minutes than ever. So obviously it was his first playoff experience. He's going to be a little rusty. And all those factors. But if he can just be an offensive presence at all times, because he's always going to be a defensive presence. He's a defensive player type candidate in any given year into the future. He's going to be one of the greatest defensive players in the NBA in a couple of years. And if he can just have an offensive presence in the playoffs, it's going to be great for the Cavaliers. The Boston Celtics obviously had that big trade this offseason where they traded Marcus Smart for Kristaps Porzingis and a couple other things that happened in that trade. Obviously, they trade Kristaps Porzingis to push them over the hump. They were already NBA championship caliber team. Obviously, they went to the NBA Finals 2 years ago against the Warriors, inevitably lost in 6 games. So they're hoping that Kristaps can put them over the hump. He had his best performing year last year with the Washington Wizards. I mean, that was also perhaps because the Wizards were just a horrible team in general, so he was one of the only options. But he's been averaging 20 points for the past 5 years. So he's going to give the Celtics a lot of scoring. He's going to help just distribute the ball. He's going to be expanding the court. He's going to be on the three-point line. He's going to be very good for their offense. Don't know about the defensive aspect or the rotation aspect of like Robert Williams and Al Horford and other players like that. But if the Celtics want to go back to the NBA Finals, Kristaps Porzingis is going to have to play very well. And I know I said I wasn't going to do like best player on the team, but I think for the Clippers it's a little bit different. So for the Clippers, I'm doing Kawhi Leonard, and specifically a healthy Kawhi Leonard. Obviously, as far as Kawhi has been on the Clippers, every year he's been injured of some sort. It's derailed their season in some sort of fashion. Same with Paul George. I could have gone Paul George as well, but I think Kawhi Leonard's a much better player. Well, I don't say much better, but I think he's definitely a better player than Paul George, defensively and offensively. When Kawhi Leonard is healthy, he can be an MVP type player. He can be a defensive player of the year candidate. He can do everything for you on the court. Obviously, his personality off the court, I don't know about that. But if Kawhi Leonard is healthy, the Clippers are a championship-type team. That's it. Kawhi Leonard healthy can make any team that he's on a championship-caliber team. And if the Clippers want to have a good season, it's going to boil down to this. For the Memphis Grizzlies, it's Marcus Smart. It's just like what I said about Kristaps Porzingis. They were traded for one another. Well, not trade for one another, but they were in the same realm of a trade. The Grizzlies are going to be a very good defensive team. If Marcus Smart can play like he did 2 years ago when he won Defensive Player of the Year. He's still not that old. He's going to be 29. He's 28, 29 years old. He provides offense. He can provide another ball handler if Ja Morant is out, which he will be for a couple games to start the season, which I think is going to be very vital for Marcus Smart's development on the Grizzlies. It's going to help them out tremendously. The Grizzlies have the past 2 defensive players of the year with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Marcus Smart. So if they can just get the defense out of Marcus Smart and his offense, he can space the floor. He has a great three-point shooter. He averages about 34% from the field at a decently high clip, 6 threes a game. He can body you up as well. He may be like a smaller guard, but he definitely does not act like it on the floor. So Marcus Smart for the Grizzlies is going to be very good. Now for the Atlanta Hawks, I could have gone with a couple of players, but I'm going to go with Saddiq Bey. Saddiq Bey is going into his 4th season. He's going to be 24 years old. On the Detroit Pistons, he was a very good player. He averaged 16 points in his last full season with Detroit. Last year on the Hawks, he averaged 12, which was his career low, including his rookie year. So if the Atlanta Hawks want to be a lot better than they were last year, a play-in team, they're going to need to get a lot more out of Saddiq Bey. He can shoot at a high clip. He's a great shooter. That is what he's known for. He's not a great defender by any means. I mean, he averages about a steal per season, which is valuable. He's big. He's 6'7". So if the Hawks want to be good, they're going to have to utilize everything out of Saddiq Bey. He's going to need to be able to shoot well from the field. And I don't know, he's a fringe starter, and they might want to experiment more with their starting lineup to see if they can put him in, have a bigger lineup, especially with Trae Young as the point. But I don't know. Saddiq Bey is going to have a great year for the Hawks if the Hawks want to do something special than what they did last year. Coming off of a NBA Finals run, but inevitably losing, the Miami Heat. Their player I'm looking at for this upcoming season is definitely Caleb Martin. Had an amazing postseason. You could have argued that he could have been the Eastern Conference MVP or Eastern Conference Finals MVP with Jimmy Butler. He had an amazing series. But my concern is if he can keep it up. He's going into his fifth year, and he way over average scored in the playoffs. I mean, he's always been a below 10-point per game scorer. Last year he averaged 30 minutes with the Heat. So in the playoffs he just went crazy. So if he can keep that up, the Miami Heat might have a good shot. I mean, the East is always getting better. I just don't know if Miami's getting there. It's going to be hard for Miami to get back to the NBA Finals. I mean, they were an A seed last year, but that was because of injuries and such. But Caleb Martin's going to have a crazy season like he did in the playoffs for the Miami Heat to get back to where they were. The Charlotte Hornets, obviously, they're a bad team. Gordon Hayward is the player I'm choosing for them. You could say he's their best player. I don't know. It's probably LaMelo at this point. His first year in Charlotte, he averaged about 20 points per game, and every season since, it's just gone downhill. Obviously, Gordon Hayward's been a victim of injuries throughout the past 5 or 6 seasons. Hasn't really played over 50 games since the season after his big leg injury. He's just going to need to be a leader for the Hornets. I don't see the Hornets getting far, so I'm not saying if he plays well, they're going to be a finals contending team or anything like that. But he's going to need to be a leader because they're a young team, they're a young squad. They're going to need leadership. Gordon Hayward, he's been through the ringer. He knows what it takes to be a good player. He knows what it takes to be a good teammate. So for me, Gordon Hayward is vital to the Hornets' development and all. For the Utah Jazz, I have Walker Kessler. He's going to be going into his sophomore season. He was an all-rookie player last year. Great defensive type player. He averaged 2.3 blocks per game, averaged 9.2 points per game. The Jazz were a mediocre team. They looked very promising. They're very young as well with some other teams. Lauri Markkanen had a big jump, so that's why I didn't pick him. But I think for the Utah Jazz, if they want to catch some eyes of some other teams, Walker Kessler, he's going to need to improve his offensive game a lot, in my opinion, especially his free throw shooting. He shot barely above 50% from the free throw line, which, if we're looking at one major cause of one thing Walker Kessler can improve on to become such a better player, it's going to be free throw shooting. I mean, he shot 2 a game. He only made 1 per game, so that's only 1 extra point he would be averaging. I mean, if he got that clip up just a little higher. But as he goes farther into his development, farther into his bag, he's going to be getting better at offense, which I hope is what he's improving on in this offseason, which he greatly needs to do, especially just to have a paint presence for the Utah Jazz. He's going to be getting fouled more and more as his career goes along, and just getting that free throw number up is going to be very vital for him and his development and all. For the Sacramento Kings, I have Malik Monk, and I'm basically going to give the same explanation I did for Caleb Martin. Malik Monk, he didn't start any games last year for the Kings, averaged 13 points per game, a great six-man coming off of the bench, a great player you want coming off the bench for your team if you can average 13 points. But it was the playoffs again. He almost averaged 20 points in the playoffs. Didn't start any of those either, but he had the minutes of a starter. He was doing 30 minutes a game. So if the Kings want to have the expectations that they did last year, they were a great team last year. Sadly, they got out first round of the Warriors, who just won basically off of experience. But Malik Monk's gonna have to have a big season. He's gonna need to show that the playoffs wasn't a fluke. For the New York Knicks, it's the 2019 third overall pick, RJ Barrett, who was number one in his draft class. RJ Barrett has showed promise. He has averaged 20 points per game for the past 2 seasons. He's always been a double-digit scorer throughout his career. My problem with RJ Barrett is he looks like this is what he's going to be. I mean, he doesn't improve vastly after any given season. He always looks to have the same shot selection. His free throw shooting is about the same throughout every season. His field goal percentage is the same throughout every season. His three-point shooting has gone down actually each season, besides his rookie to his sophomore season, which went up. But I think if the Knicks, because the Knicks are going with this team of Brunson as their main headliner, Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, that's their big three. But if RJ Barrett wants to be a part of that big three, he's going to have to get into the realm of all-star. He's going to have to get into the realm of a player who's getting double-teamed constantly, whose teams are going to have to game plan for specifically with the way he's going to be able to attack the rim. That's why I picked RJ Barrett for the Knicks. For the Los Angeles Lakers, I think it's no doubt Austin Reeves. He's going into his third year. He's a slightly older type player for when he was drafted. He's going to be 25 going into this year. Still young, though. He went from a 7.3 points per game scored in his rookie year to a 13 per game. Started a couple more games than he did his rookie year. Got some more minutes. He's just more of a offensive focal point for their team. He's bringing the ball up more. He improved a lot from last season. My only concern is if he can maintain it, because he is with LeBron James, who finds the open player every time, and one of those players is going to be Austin Reeves. He's in a very good offense, so I'm just wondering with the decline. I don't want to say the fall of like LeBron and Anthony Davis, but they're obviously on the declines of their career. LeBron James especially, as if he can keep this up, be a player who just got paid quite a decent amount. He can be that player for the Lakers, especially in the future, and he can show that he's not going anywhere with his skill, and last year wasn't a fluke. I have Wendell Carter Jr. for the Orlando Magic. Going into his 6th year, he's still very young. He's 23, 24 years old each year. He's progressed in points. But I think it's time that he shows his true potential. He's the 7th overall pick back in 2018. Especially with the team that he's on, with the Orlando Magic. I think Wendell Carter Jr. with all the talent that he has, he could easily, I don't know about easily, but he could be an all-star type player, especially a leader for the Orlando Magic, who's a very young team. He kind of gets overshadowed by Franz and Paolo, especially. But Wendell Carter Jr., he's their main big man. They don't really have any others, especially with Bol leaving this offseason. So Wendell Carter Jr., he's gonna be big for the Orlando Magic and securing their paint, just being their focal down low scorer, and that's gonna be big for the Magic. For the Dallas Mavericks, I know this might be a weird pick because I could say like Kyrie, I could say Dwight Powell, I could say Tim Hardaway Jr., but I'm going to go with the player that they just acquired this offseason, Grant Williams. Grant Williams has gotten a bad rap for the past couple months, especially for what he did in the playoffs with Jimmy Butler and all that. He incited some of the power that Jimmy Butler harnessed in the playoffs to say the least. He's not a guy who scores a lot of points. Last year was his best year where he averaged 8.1 points per game. He's also a fairly young guy, 24, 25. He's a guy who's improved vastly since his rookie year on the three-point line. He's around the 40% mark at around 4 threes per game, which is very good for the Dallas Mavericks, who have Luka, who just wants to pass out to guys out on the perimeter for three-point shots and guys who can just be trusted on the three-point line. That's going to be very good for the Dallas Mavericks. For the Brooklyn Nets, I think this is a no-brainer. It's Ben Simmons, obviously. When healthy and when playing, Ben Simmons is an all-star type player. He's a steals champion. He's an all-NBA player. We know what Ben Simmons can do when he's healthy. He has the potential to be a triple-double average player. In the years that he was healthy and an all-star, he was averaging 16, 8, and 8. With amazing defense as well. He averaged 2.1 steals in his best steal season. So if Ben Simmons, there have been reports, especially by, I think it was Spencer Dinwiddie. He was on a podcast the other day where he talked about how Ben Simmons has been working. He's in the best shape of his life. He loves the team around him. I hope that's true because the Brooklyn Nets could be a very fun and entertaining team to watch if Ben Simmons is just willing to put it all out there on the court. For the Denver Nuggets, they're coming off of a championship. So obviously, I don't really need to point out a vital player. You could just be like Nikola Jokic because he does everything. But that's not what I'm here for. That's not the video I'm trying to make. And I'm going to go with Christian Braun. With the departure of Bruce Brown Jr., who was instrumental for their run and winning the championship. Bruce Brown he could pass it. He could spot up on the three-point line. He was very athletic. He could play defense. He did it all for the Denver Nuggets last year, and there's going to be a void there now. And Christian Braun, he's a slightly different position. He's taller than Bruce Brown Jr., but Christian Braun, he's going to have more of a workload this year. The offense is going to look a little different without Bruce Brown, I think, especially on the bench. And with the void that Bruce Brown's going to make, Christian Braun's going to have a very big role to fill. He showed some flashes in the playoffs last year. He only did average 3 points per game, but he wasn't getting many minutes. Then, like a broken record, like I've been saying, with Bruce Brown gone, he's going to be getting more minutes. He's going to be getting more shots up. He's going to be getting more passes to. He's going to have a bigger role in this team that he's going to be able to need to fill. And speaking of Bruce Brown Jr., the Indiana Pacers, I'm picking Bruce Brown because, like I said, I don't really need to go into much detail with how much I said about him last with Christian Brown. But Bruce Brown, he's a vital key to any team that he's on, and I know I've talked about this in other videos, but he knows what his role is now, especially with a championship on his and a ring on his finger. He averaged the most of pretty much every statistic last year. And with the Indiana Pacers, a much younger team, a team that doesn't really know their fit into this new NBA world, I guess, he's going to be able to fill that. He's going to be getting many more minutes. He's going to be getting a lot more. And if the Indiana Pacers want to develop like they have been, especially with Tyrese Halliburton, Bruce Brown's going to be a great part of that. For the Pelicans, it's just like Clippers and Kawhi. It's a healthy Zion. He's been in the league 4 years now, and he's played 100 and something games, very low in the hundreds, 114 games. Last year he played 29 games, somehow made the All-Star team. The year before didn't play at all. But when Zion's healthy and when Zion can play, he can easily average over 25 points per game. He's just a monster in the paint. So I think it's just enough said that a healthy Zion will push the Pelicans over the wall. They'll be a great team with him healthy. For the Detroit Pistons, I'm going with Cade Cunningham. Last year he was plagued with injuries, only played 12 games. So we had a small sample size. But in the games he did play, he was averaging 26 and 6. He's like a more efficient on offense Ben Simmons. He doesn't have the defense of Ben Simmons, but he has the attributes of, he could potentially be a solid defender later into his career. Obviously, the Detroit Pistons are a young team. Cade Cunningham was the number 1 overall pick in 2021. He is their leader. He is their best player as of right now, even with a small sample size of not even playing 82 games yet in his career, going into his 3rd year. But he's very young. He's 21. Like I said, he's the leader of this team. And if the Detroit Pistons want to have a much better season than they did last year, because last year was just outright abysmal. If they want to have a better season than last year, Cade Cunningham's going to need to show why he was the number 1 overall pick. For the Toronto Raptors, it was the player who actually won Rookie of the Year the year Cade Cunningham was drafted as well, and that's Scottie Barnes. Last year, Scottie Barnes didn't improve in any category besides passing a little bit. Every other category was pretty much the same. He averaged the same amount of points. He went down in field goal shooting, which is not what you want. He had the same amount of minutes, basically played the same amount of games. His first and second year are practically identical. And I think a lot of Toronto fans were hoping that Scottie, after his amazing freshman season, his amazing rookie season, that his sophomore season, he would have a big jump. Didn't get that, so we need that for the 3rd season. Scottie Barnes is going to have that big jump going into his 3rd season. He's going to need him to show that he's an all-star type player. He's a player who can lead this franchise because they just got rid of Fred VanVleet, so him and Pascal Siakam are like the only 2 players that you can really claw on for the Toronto Raptors. So Scottie Barnes is going to have to show that he can be the leader and he can be the franchise player for the Toronto Raptors. For the Houston Rockets, it's the man who just got traded there. It's Fred VanVleet. 2 years ago, he was an all-star. Then going into this year, Fred VanVleet, he didn't have a horrible season. He shot worse. He pretty much was worse in every category from the previous season, his all-star type season. But he's an all-star type player. He's going to be the leader for the Houston Rockets. He's going to be the veteran of some sorts, even though he's been in the league for about 7 years. He's going to be the player that Josh Green, Kevin Porter Jr., the Thompson twin, they're going to be looking up for guidance and development as their young careers are progressing. So Fred VanVleet is going to be very important for the Houston Rockets in this upcoming season. Hopefully he can have years like he did. I mean, he should be getting a lot more touches, especially with the young team that he's on. So I would expect him to be over that 20-point per game mark, which is what I think he needs to be able to do for the Rockets next season. For the San Antonio Spurs, I got Trey Jones. For the one simple reason that he's going to be the guy who's going to be able to get the max potential out of Victor Wembanyama. He's the Spurs starting point guard. He's the main ball distributor. He's the main guy bringing the ball up the court. So he's going to be the guy who's going to be able to max out Wembanyama's potential, get him to where he can be that generational type talent. He's going to be able to get him open. He's going to be able to feed him the ball in the post, especially with his low turnover ratio to assists. I mean, last year he averaged 6.6 assists. I'm going to need those assist numbers to get way up, especially with Victor on the floor. Trey Jones, he's just going to be very important for the Spurs next season. For the Phoenix Suns, I have a little bit of a different approach. It's not as much of a player. It's just their whole bench. The Phoenix Suns are stacked on their starting lineup. I mean, they have Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and DeAndre Ayton starting for them. They're probably going to all be averaging like 40 minutes a game with how their bench is set up. But their bench is not very good. So, and you need a good bench if you want to win a championship because you can't be playing all your players 48 minutes a night. Obviously, they're probably going to be doing something with their rotation where at least 2 of their best players are out, or 2 of the 4 of the players I just mentioned are going to be out on the floor at all times. But in those groups of 5, you're still going to have 3 players that are coming off the bench. I mean, Eric Gordon, he's going to be big for them. Drew Eubanks, Ish Wainwright in respects. Bol, who they signed. Josh Okogie, Yuta Wadanube. All of those players are going to need to show up for the Suns if they want to be a championship team, which they are talent-wise with the 4 players I mentioned before. But you still need a bench that can play. For the OKC Thunder, I got Chet Holmgren. I think a lot of their expectations and the prediction of how good they are going to be going into next season, especially with they were a fringe play-in team last season, all rides on Chet Holmgren. Because they don't really have another big at all. I mean, they drafted a point guard and they drafted a bunch of smaller guys. They didn't draft many big guys. And they don't have many others on their bench that are going to be good enough. So Chet Holmgren is going to be their main paint guy, their main defender, and he's going to be able to space the floor if he's playing well. So Chet Holmgren is probably the most vital guy that I've mentioned on this list for their team's over-the-top success. I mean, without him, they can still probably be a good team, especially with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and all the young guys who have been developing. But Chet Holmgren is going to be able to push them over the top even more if he's playing well and what he was picked to do. Like, especially since he's like a Victor Wembanyama type of prospect. Now, for my team, the Minnesota Timberwolves, we have Rudy Gobert. Last year was his worst year that he's had in a very long time. Obviously, he's with a new team, a new coach, a new offense, and a new defense. But he was not great, I would say, on defense. He wasn't really in the Defensive Player of the Year conversations, and he's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. The last 3 seasons, besides last year when he was on Utah, he was an all-star. He wasn't really close to that, especially in his rebounding numbers. His rebounding numbers were very low, the lowest they've been in the past 5 years. So if the Timberwolves want to do what they were hoping to do, well, at least what I think they were hoping to do when they got Rudy Gobert, he's going to need to be that Defensive Player of the Year type player again. I mean, he's gotten a little older, but I don't think any of that skill has gone away. I think, honestly, since last season, his drive has only gotten up because of how he played. So I think he's going to have a much better season, and he needs to have a much better season if the Timberwolves want to do what they were hoping to do with him. The Portland Trailblazers, I'm going to go with Anthony Simons. With the awaited departure of Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons is going to be the head guy at point, most likely. I mean, along with Scoot. They're going to be the duo, but Anthony Simons is going to have a much bigger role than Scoot, especially with Scoot just being a rookie. Every year, Anthony Simons has only gotten better. He had a big jump from 21 to the 22 season, from 8 points per game to 17. Last year, he averaged 21 points per game. His shooting numbers are only going up. His minutes per game only go up. He plays about 35 minutes per game. If the Trailblazers want to show that they don't need Damian Lillard, I guess, because I don't think they're banking on winning a championship. I think they're just going to try to develop. I mean, they'll try to win right away. They're going to have a solid squad, especially with Jeremy Grant still being there. They're going to be a solid squad. Anthony Simons, which I think is going to be a no-doubter. He's going to be an all-star type player. I don't know if he'll make the all-star team because there's just so many good players in the league now. But he just needs to keep improving, and the Trailblazers will be fine. For the Golden State Warriors, it's Chris Paul. They just traded Jordan Poole for him this offseason, which I actually will be talking about Jordan Poole in the last team that I talk about. But Chris Paul, we know what he is. He's one of the best point guards to ever play for this league. He's a distributor. I just think he needs to be able to fit with the Warriors. I don't think a lot of people realize that Chris Paul could be an absolutely amazing fit for the Warriors. It was kind of weird when they traded for him, especially trading away Jordan Poole, who's just been improving every year, and he's a younger guy. I mean, Chris Paul is going to be turning 38 this year. And he's just only gone down. He's only diminished in his offensive efficiency. He's been having a couple injuries as well, especially with his hands, which are not great for shooting. He's one of the best free throw shooters in the game. But I just think he needs to be able to fit well in the Golden State Warriors offense, and then Golden State's always a title contender every year, no matter how they fall in the standings at the end of the year. And finally, for the Washington Wizards, it's Jordan Poole, like I said. Obviously, he just got traded for Chris Paul this offseason. Jordan Poole is going to be their main guy, him and Kyle Kuzma. If it's going to be a successful trade, it's going to be a successful rebuild of the Washington Wizards, it's going to be on the back of if Jordan Poole can be a franchise player. I mean, they obviously drafted Bilal Coulibaly this year. I don't think they drafted him to be a franchise player, though. I think they're focusing on Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole, and I think Jordan Poole specifically, because Jordan Poole, he's younger, he's been constantly improving, he can pass, he can be the distributor, he's solid on defense as well. I mean, he's not great on defense, but he's solid. One of the best free throw shooters in the league as well. And it's going to be banking, their whole season's going to be banking on if Jordan Poole can be that franchise player for them. And there you have it. That's my list for a player on each team that's vital to their success in this upcoming season. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Leave a comment if you have any suggestions or you just disagree in the video, or if you agree, if you want to talk about something good that I did. I mean, this is a little bit different of a video than I normally do. Usually I do like 15-minute long videos. It's obviously a longer video, and usually it's just about a specific team, but this is about each individual player. So just let me know how it is, and thanks.